Hey guys, today we're doing another audio review. So like I said in the past, I'm going to start pumping out audio reviews because I enjoy them. So let's jump straight into it. Today we have the UniqueMelody Mest MK2. It's kindly unknown to me by another local enthusiast, so shout out Damien if you do watch this. Quick background intro into UniqueMelody. They are a Chinese IEM company specializing in high-end IEMs. So not your regular chi-fi, but actually high-end stuff. Now they hold a very good reputation in the high-end IEM community, and almost everyone would have owned or at least heard a UniqueMelody IEM sometime in the past. Otherwise, they just haven't really participated in high-end IEMs.
AKA you're just too broke to own any UniqueMelody IEM. I am one of those people.
Now, if you watched my Cayin C9 video, you'll know that Cayin and UniqueMelody have collabed to release a high-end flagship IEM, which they call the Amber Pearl.
Pause. Not gonna lie, I thought Amber Heard made an IEM collab. Guess I misheard. Ha ha ha. Get it? Miss. Heard? Guess I misheard. And I'm just too versed into some memes. Anyways, back to the review.
Now, I've also tried their other things, such as the Red Halo and the Mentor Multiverse, which were amazing. So the Mest MK2 here actually released a few years back. And a few months ago, the Mest MK3 has also been released as a successor to the Mest MK2. So that means the Mest MK2 here has experienced a significant drop in price. And that's another reason for me to release this video now, so that you guys can take advantage of the price drop. So I believe the Mest MK2 previously retailed for $1,800 US new, but now some places have been selling it for $1,000 US new. And that makes this perhaps one of the single best purchases you can make at that price. Now, we will see how the Monarch Mark III matches up to this in the future, but the Mest MK2 has been quite a staple in high-end audio. It has overwhelmingly positive feedback from everyone who has tried it, and needless to say, this feedback is well warranted. Now, most notably, the Mest is known for holographic imaging and being a relaxed, all-around good listen. Unfortunately, I do not have any of the packaging or accessories for the Mest 2 here. It was just handed to me like this, an IEM with the stock cable. In terms of quick details, the Mest MK2 here features one dynamic driver for bass, 4 BA drivers for mids and treble, 2 ESTs for ultra high frequencies, and lastly, a full range bone conduction driver. Now, the bone conduction driver is actually quite an interesting thing that we can talk a bit more about later, but the first thing to touch on here though is the stock cable. The Mest 2 cable is absolutely atrocious. The Mest 2 cable here is absolutely atrocious, and I don't mean sonically, but rather in terms of ergonomics. Now, I'm not really picky with ergonomics in general. The cable is lightweight, and usually that's ideal. These angled square ear hooks are just absolutely terrible for trying to fit onto your ears. In addition, the cable tangles easily, and it doesn't really feel that high quality. So I think some people will like cables that are like this, which are thin and light, easy to use, but the tangling and ear hooks just completely break the deal for me. Like, I actually just cannot get these ear hooks to function properly. It just doesn't work. So now we'll move straight into sound, because that's what everyone's here for. We're mostly talking about sound. We'll begin with that bone conduction driver. So I won't talk too much about what the bone conduction drivers actually do. You can do your own research, but the name is pretty self-explanatory. Many brands are starting to try and incorporate bone conduction drivers into their IEMs, but each do it differently. Noble Kublai Khan, for example, uses bone conduction just for bass, while the Mest MK2 here implements it for full frequency range. However, it's important to note that the effects of bone conduction drivers do not show up on frequency response graphs. Make sure you guys take all frequency response graphs regarding the Mest 2 here with a grain of salt. So now that that's been said, we can move to talk about each frequency. So starting with the bass as per usual. The Mest 2 is excellent, surprisingly so. In fact, this was the most surprising aspect of this IEM to me. And I'll throw up the frequency response graph here now on the screen so you guys can see. But the Mest isn't exactly a bass heavy or bass light IEM, but rather it's just standard, easy to accept bass quantity. It's perfect for essentially all music, but there might be times where you want to bop your head and vibe to some electronic music, and by then you really want more bass quantity to start slamming your head. In that case, you might want to look elsewhere for a bass head IEM, but generally speaking, the quantity here is perfect for all music and it will satisfy. The quality is where it gets special. Mid-bass on this IEM hits with impact, though I do want to say it's not the most visceral and impactful mid-bass. Pure bass heads, once again, look elsewhere. Sub bass extension, however, is amazing on the Mest 2. Like on tracks when the sub bass hits, when it needs to rumble, this thing seriously rumbles. The sub bass is far superior to the mid bass in terms of quality on the Mest 2 here, and it does an amazing job for setting soundstage and soundstage depth. So the way I hear it, sub bass is very important for soundstaging and depth because the sub bass provides the full size of the sound. It colors the entire background. And then everything else you hear, whether that's detail, that's vocals, or anything else, is somewhere within that space created by the sub bass rumbling out. Listening to the Mest, things just sound nice, smooth, and offensive. They're there until suddenly this rumble just comes out from out of nowhere and it rumbles seriously hard and deep, and you're like, whoa, I never expected that to happen. I am like seriously impressed. So the next thing we'll talk about is mids. The mids on the Mest are unique. Get the joke? UniqueMelody, haha.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
First, they're on the leaner side of things, and this is really hard to describe because the graph indicates that there are lower mids, which there definitely is. The warmth, the tonality, it's present, it's how it should be. But at the same time, sounds are very diffused and not solid, so it results in somewhat of a thin holographic sound. Listening to female vocals, for example, the warmth and tonality of the vocals are correct, they sound relaxed, yet at the same time, it sounds a bit hollow and doesn't have a solid note weight. Now, string instruments, which are usually strummed, plucked, like guitars or Chinese guzheng or other string instruments of the such, sound absolutely amazing on the Mest. But other instruments, or other string instruments for example, with a bit more weight, such as violin or cello, those sound a bit more hollowed out and not as weighty. Now normally, we'd associate thin sounding with a bit of fatigue and sharpness, demanding your attention and feeling that energy being brought out. Yet the Mest is not that. So this is kind of where the balance point is between sounding thin and diffused and somehow still being just a relaxed, enjoyable listen that you can fall asleep to. And while the upper mids look extremely recessed, it definitely doesn't sound anywhere like what the graph indicates. And this is the result of the bone conduction driver, which doesn't show up on graphs. So while it's not a mid-forward, vocal forward IEM, it's definitely not something that is recessed and makes you want to turn the volume up to hear the voices. However, I can't really say I'm the biggest fan of how the mids sound here on the Mest. Note that mids on IEM such as the Diva and V16 are what I like. Lastly, we talk about treble. Now, the treble is quite frankly great. The first thing to talk about is sibilance. Does the Mest 2 ever sound sibilant? No, this was quite a surprise because I expected a bit of sibilance coming from the Mest 2 looking at the graph, but that never really happened. Does it get fatiguing, however? Yes, it can. So in regards to this fatigue, I do want to mention that it happens based on volume, because if you're listening to an electronic track and you want to bob your head and you want that bass to hit harder, you turn the volume right up and then the bass hits hard. But then when the high pitched notes finally come in, then all of a sudden it gets really fatiguing because that upper range starts to blast your ears. In general, safer, relaxed listening volumes, the treble on the Mest is perfect. It's never too much, it's never too little, and for my preferences, that's all I can really ask for. Now, one of the most important things to me for treble when it comes to IEMs or headphones is that does it have that sparkle in tracks which have sparkling sounds? For example, if you guys listen to Fireflies by Owl City, how are the chimes? At the start of the track, at the end of the track, you guys hear that ding ding everywhere. Or even if you listen to Flower Dance, there's a sparkle that glides across from right to left, and needless to say, the Mest does that really well. Now onto the technical aspects of this IEM. We'll start with resolution. The resolution here on the Mest 2 is excellent. It's in high-end IEM, and you'd expect it to resolve well. Now I do want to credit the tuning of the IEM to an extent as well, because the slight treble boost really does bring out a bit more perceived detail. And if anything, this is probably an aspect that will wow listeners on their first time trying this IEM. In addition, the balanced mid-bass tuning and thinner mids are well done to not overpower other sounds. And so that gives all the detail out and makes sure it's all perceivable. I don't need to talk too much about this part. I think this IEM is very capable in this department, and it doesn't even get that much better going into high-end IEMs. Separation is also excellent. There really isn't much for me to say here. All products at this tier generally do well in this regard. Also, separation is somewhat linked to the tuning as well. Normally, resolution and separation are interlinked, given that good separation is also higher perceived resolution and detail. So as per previously said in resolution, the tuning here also supports sounds in being well separated. Soundstaging is where the true magic is, and it is what most people associate the Mest 2 with. Does it do this well?
Give me a hell yeah! What?
Hell yeah. So I was previously mentioning there's something about the leaner and diffused sound of the Mest 2 that just makes it sound extremely holographic. Nothing is ever quite in your face and forceful. If you then combine that with the grand sub bass filling out the entire picture, you really start to see why people enjoy the Mest for this regard. Now, this isn't really something I can just describe using words anymore. You really do need to experience it yourself to understand. The bright side, it really won't take long for a listener to understand why everyone praises this for holographic imaging. It's so obvious, it's so apparent, one listen and you'll know. Now, speed and dynamics on the Mest 2 are excellent as well. The IEM slams when it needs to. Volume contrast is especially good when the sub bass kicks into tracks. The treble also works its magic. It's so lightning fast. I love the speed of the treble. Those EST drivers are really doing things. I do want to say though, the bass being a dynamic driver isn't as fast as it would be from a BA driver. Nonetheless, the dynamics are still excellent. Positional audio and gaming experiences on this IEM needs no mention. It's more than enough to satisfy all gaming needs, and if you buy an IEM of this price for gaming, you really are wasting its potential. Please listen to some music, listen to lossless music. So for quick comparisons that come to mind, I think of the V16 Divinity and the Elysian Diva. Now, unfortunately, I no longer have the V16 Divinity, but I did make a review on that, so you guys could go watch that. Compared to the V16, the Mest here, in my opinion, has more satisfying bass, but the mids and tonality of the V16 absolutely destroy the Mest 2 for me. Treble, however, once again goes to the Mest in terms of being crisp and sparkly. In terms of technicalities, the Mest has higher perceived resolution due to the more treble forward tuning and leaner mids, but I think both do an excellent job in this department, and honestly it's roughly the same. Speed and dynamics are won by the Mest. If you watch the V16 video, you'll know the only complaint I have about it is probably a bit of weakness in speed and dynamics. I would say though, these IEMs are within the same tier range, and I would just personally still prefer V16 based on that tonality difference. It's pretty significant. Other departments which the Mest is better at, it's only a minor improvement. Now compared to the Elysian Diva here, the story is exactly the same as it was with the V16. The Diva is a truly amazing IEM. Regarding bass, the Diva bass is extremely well done that you can't really even tell that it's BA bass anymore, and the difference between it and the Mest 2 is pretty small. I would still give the satisfaction award, however, to the Mest 2 here. That DD bass definitely does rumble just a little bit harder. Mids and tonality is the Diva's bread and butter. Needless to say, the Diva obviously wins here by a landslide. If anything, the Diva is one of the best IEMs there is in terms of mids and tonality. Now moving back to the treble side of things again though, the Diva does lose to the Mest. If anything, the Diva has a bit of treble recession, and honestly there isn't much sparkle to it. Percussion instruments are a bit lacking, shakers aren't really shaking, and so on. In some cases that might be a bit boring. So for resolution, I think the Diva and Mest is on par with each other. Once again, the Mest tuning may provide a bit more perceived detail, but both do an excellent job. So speed and dynamics this time, however, are equal, and I wouldn't say one is better than the other. Needless to say, I would still prefer the Diva purely for tonality reasons. So do I recommend the Mest 2? Most definitely. It truly lives up to its name of being an all-round good and capable IEM while having an amazing holographic soundstage. My personal preferences would lead me to pick Diva and V16 over it, but I'd be perfectly happy with the Mest 2 if those were all the items in contention. Now do keep in mind that the Diva and the V16 are also more expensive. Given the current price of the Mest 2, this is an easy no-brainer recommendation, especially if you guys can find a used Mest which would be even less than $1,000 US. So we shall see how the Monarch Mark III matches against the Mest 2 later, but as of now, go get your Mests and I'll see you guys in the next video.